Hey everyone, RogueGold here. Welcome back to the Division 2. Today, I want to try and round up everything that has been happening in the game these past few days following the launch of Into the Dark last week, as well as highlight some key things coming up that I think are important to be aware of. As we dive into this roundup, I just wanted to throw out an acknowledgement that uploads have been a bit scarce this past launch week, and for that I wanted to give out my apologies for anyone who came by the channel looking for updates with ongoing issues, whether it be the Delta crashes or just broader general coverage of the new update. Unfortunately, last week I had a limited time to try and get everything out. I had a family affair out of town to get to over the weekend, so long story short, I did not get as much done as I would have liked, but we're going to start to try and make up for that today. I want to cover what's been happening, what's happening now, and what's coming next. So we'll get right to it, but before we do, as always, have to give a major shout out and thank you to all of our channel members. Your support of the channel each and every month means more than you know. I cannot thank you enough for everything that you do to keep this going. Timestamps are down below for everything that we're going to go over, but alright, let's get to it. Beginning with, you may have noticed that there are many different issues that have popped up in the game this past week, whether that be actual bugs with the new season and content, server connection issues, all of it. I wanted to just provide an update on what we know for some of the biggest ones here. Of course, the most notable of those being the rampant Delta crashes. So I made a community post about this on the channel back on Friday while I was on the road to try and alert all of you, but the devs posted out that a maintenance was incoming to try and fix the issues back on Saturday. That maintenance seems to have yielded mixed results. I had 3 deltas in one day back on Thursday, which was the last time I played. Then when I got back last night, I played for a couple of hours and had none, though I've heard that others have not quite been so lucky. So it seems as though the frequency of deltas has seen an overall reduction, but perhaps is not completely solved. When the maintenance concluded, the team did communicate that as a side effect of the delta fix, we are seeing an issue with the immune response passive modifier not activating when using a medkit. This is now listed as a known issue for upcoming updates. So if you didn't see that and you're wondering why the immune response passive is not working, there you go. So yeah, this whole situation has been rocky. I do appreciate the devs putting in the work over the weekend to get this maintenance and fix out. It's of course unfortunate that it had to happen at all, but hopefully this continues to improve. Now, speaking more on the practical and content side of things, there have been a number of issues raised with the PvE Dark Zone that released last week, and alongside some other new season issues, I've seen a lot of people being unsure of if the devs are even aware of these things or going to improve them. So like I will always say, I highly recommend you go and bookmark the Division 2 bug reporter site. The link for that is contained within the link tree down in the description, but this page is the easiest way to track ongoing issues in the Division 2, known bugs, as well as fix statuses without having to rely on people like myself for the info. So if you had navigated to the bug reporter sometime since last week, you'll have seen that the team is aware of and working on multiple fixes and improvements. For one, we have the PvE Dark Zone toxicity visual hazing that is likely to be reduced in some form. In my view then, the even more annoying one, which is the audio that plays when you have high toxicity levels, that's being looked at. Then outside of the DZ, I've been getting a lot of questions about Countdown having progression blockers within it, notably with how pipe lids were presenting as if they were immune. Do note that it looks as though you can still damage these with skills, something like the Oxidizer Chem Launcher, if you don't want to be completely blocked. But yes, this is of course still a big issue, and the team is looking into it. Now, as always, the bug reporter is not an exhaustive list of all issues that they're looking into. For example, we did get confirmation on Twitter from the game director that Hunter griefing with skills in the PvE DZ is being looked into for a solution. However, the last thing that I wanted to bring up is something that I've not seen noted on either the bug reporter or social media. I'm sure that the team is aware at this point, but I think it is worth covering nonetheless, and that's that I have seen lots of questions in the community on why combat within the PvE DZ feels a bit weird, whether that be damage spikes from the enemies, overly tanky enemies, delayed enemy damage. Well, if you've experienced anything that sounds like one of those things, then that is most likely due to a desync issue that seems to be mostly isolated to the toxic Dark Zone. I wonder if it has something to do with the system straining to try and load 12 people, lots of NPCs, visual and audio stuff all at once. I have no idea, but here's some example clips on my end. This happens most notably with breakable armor or deployable deployed skills. So you'll see here that if I break either a hyena shield or like the armor on a heavy, it takes a moment to start damaging their health bar. It acts as though the armor is still there. Additionally, whenever I go to shoot like a hyena turret, it takes a second to start dealing damage to it. So this is definitely very annoying. No, you are not going crazy if you've experienced something similar to this within the PvE DZ. And yeah, while we have no updates on it so far, hopefully a solution can be implemented soon. With that down, I then wanted to shift up to some events that are coming up that I think are worth keeping an eye on. Firstly, I hope that those of you who needed it have been taking advantage of the 3 times proficiency event for this past week. If you did not know that I was running, again, I'm so sorry that we didn't get to talk about it in a prior video, but if you're watching this soon after I'm posting it, then you do still have the rest of today to take advantage of this before it's gone. And this is kind of set up in a nice back-to-back format because tomorrow we then transition straight into an expertise surge event. So you got triple XP for ranking up your proficiency within the expertise system this past week. Then starting tomorrow and for the next week, you get double materials to perform those upgrades. You will see me back tomorrow with some coverage and tips for farming that. As with this latest season and update, we now have some increases to exotic component sources, and I think that opens the door for some real gains made during this event. Lastly, then if you had not caught on to this trend yet and you were wondering why the in-game calendar is so short right now, what the team has started doing since last season is they're now staggering the slate. So if you see this listed, it means that that is the expected date for the next in-game patch, and it is at that point that they will refresh and extend the calendar. So that would mean that as of right now, Year 8 Season 2.1 is slated for June 30th. Hopefully that patch can deliver many of the fixes and improvements that we mentioned in the previous section, but yeah, that's a look at what's coming up in-game soon. Now, finally, on the topic of upcoming events, I did want to end off with some speculation for this season's upcoming summer event. I think fairly there's some varying degrees of anticipation for this. I think many are likely to be skeptical of how this will perform after last season's controversial Cherry Blossom event, which was essentially the spring event. This next summer event that we have coming up will be the latest iteration to that formula. It's also set to round off what is likely going to be our 4 major season events for the year. After this, we will likely rotate back to Halloween in the fall. But even before this update rolled around, I'd been very curious what they were going to do for this one, specifically how they would go about improving things after the Cherry Blossom debacle. Well, again, we didn't have a chance to touch on this since this season launched, but we did receive our first hints as to what this summer event could end up being, and that came from the Year 8 Season 2 Dev Diary, where Yannick, the game's creative director, said this.
There's much more coming this season. From a summer event that will take you by storm to a brand new...
So, I don't think it is simply a coincidence that he said this event will take us by storm. If we take a step back, one of the big questions that I've had about this event is what theme will they try and go for? Obviously, Halloween usually capitalizes on the fall window. This time around, they opted for the Cherry Blossom theme to embody the spring event. But I feel like your options limit a little bit when it comes to the summer. I mean, what, were we just going to see like palm trees put up at the base? And this was especially a big question that I had if they were not going to repeat the 4th of July theme that we kind of saw them go for last year. But if you're going to look a little bit deeper into Yannick's comment there, I think that a summer thunderstorm theme could actually fit for this. And it was at this point that I made a potential little connection here. No idea if it's going to pan out or not, but it has to do with this season's upcoming incursion. It was confirmed on the dev stream that while we fight at this new hydroelectric plant, a hurricane is rolling in outside. Even when you go to the incursion section of the patch notes, it says that a storm is coming. So again, maybe these things are completely unrelated, but we do know that when given the opportunity, the team will often reuse new stuff or new tech that they create to try and get the most value out of it. Think back to something like BTSU Team 9 last season, which was primarily used in retaliation, but then they also showed up in the Master Climax mission. So what if this hurricane that is going to show up in the incursion meant that new weather patterns or tech had to be created, and then for the summer event, we see that repurposed and used within DC, either to create the atmosphere or the event or to tie into the gameplay in some way. That's my early prediction. Again, I could be 100% wrong, but the bottom line is that this thing is likely going to be coming up fairly soon, either with Year 8 Season 2.1 on June 30th, or if not, then I assume with Point 2, which would likely come around 2 to 3 weeks later. I'm betting that storms will somehow tie into the theme of this event, given Yannick's comments, but we shall see. Overall, I'm just curious to see how they iterate on the formula here. Well, there you have it, everybody. That is a recap on everything that is happening within the Division 2 right now. Thank you all very much for tuning in. Thank you again for your patience in sticking with my slower coverage for last week's launch. There was still a lot I want to dive into with this update in terms of PvP changes, new build options there. But as always, I think it is most important that you all are in the know on what's happening overall in the game, especially when there are issues as prominent as the deltas and the desync that we've been seeing. So I hope this video was informative, if nothing else. I would love to get your thoughts on any and everything that we went over today, whether it be the technical state of the game after last week's new season launch, or your thoughts on farming the upcoming Expertise Surge event, what your speculation may be for the summer event. Let me know. I'll be curious to hear your thoughts. That's all I've got for today, though. Stay tuned for some more videos coming your way very soon. But yeah, that's all from me, and until I see you next, RogueGold. Ow. Oh! We just got a Ravenous! I might not be friendly. Let's go.
Coming to the Division 2.
Let's go!
And